Today we are traveling to the extremes of planet Earth. Two places that look similar when we glance quickly at a map, but that are actually completely different in almost every way. The Arctic and Antarctica, the North Pole and the South Pole. Two frozen, silent, immense worlds full of mysteries. If you look at a globe, you'll notice that the top of the planet looks white, and the bottom does too. But what lies beneath that white changes everything. The Arctic is located at the far north of the Earth. It is not a continent. It is a region made up mainly of the Arctic Ocean, which is frozen at the surface for much of the year. This means the North Pole is not on solid land. It is on ice floating over water. Beneath that ice lies a deep ocean. At the far south, we find something completely different. Antarctica is an entire continent. There is a solid land there, mountains, valleys, subglacial lakes, all of it covered by a massive layer of ice that, in some places, can exceed 4 kilometers in thickness. The South Pole sits on top of this continental mass. This difference changes absolutely everything: the climate, the animals, the temperature, and even the way the wind behaves. Let's talk about temperature. Antarctica is the coldest place on Earth. The lowest temperature ever recorded on the planet was approximately minus 89 degrees Celsius, measured at the Vostok Station, located deep within Antarctica. That is cold enough to freeze your breath in the air. The air is so dry that Antarctica is considered one of the most extreme deserts in the world. Yes, Antarctica is a frozen desert. The Arctic is also extremely cold, but it rarely reaches temperatures as low as those in the south. This happens because the ocean helps store and release heat. Seawater takes longer to cool completely, which slightly moderates the climate. Antarctica, on the other hand, is a high-elevation continent, isolated by powerful ocean currents that prevent warmth from lower latitudes from reaching it. Now let's talk about something many people confuse: animals. In the Arctic lives the famous polar bear. It is one of the largest land predators in the world. It depends on sea ice to hunt seals and can swim for kilometers in freezing waters. The Arctic is also home to Arctic foxes, walruses, reindeer, and several species of whales. But there are no penguins in the Arctic. Penguins live exclusively in the southern hemisphere. They are found mainly in Antarctica and nearby regions. They evolved to withstand extreme cold, with a thick layer of fat and highly insulating feathers. And here's a curious fact: polar bears and penguins never meet in the wild. They live on opposite sides of the planet. Antarctica is also home to leopard seals, crab-eater seals, and enormous colonies of emperor penguins, which endure powerful winds and extreme temperatures to protect their chicks. Speaking of wind, Antarctica is the windiest continent on Earth. In some regions, gusts can exceed 300 kilometers per hour. This happens because cold, dense air flows down from the elevated interior of the continent toward the coast, creating intense winds known as katabatic winds. Now, let's talk about something that sounds like it came from a movie. There's a phenomenon in Antarctica called blood falls. It is located in an area known as Taylor Glacier. From a distance, it looks like blood is flowing out of the ice, but it is not blood. The water emerging there is rich in iron. When the iron comes into contact with oxygen in the air, it oxidizes and turns red, like rust. The phenomenon became famous because of its disturbing appearance. Another topic that generates a lot of discussion is the so-called Antarctic pyramids. Images of mountains with triangular shapes began circulating on the internet, and some people suggested they might be artificial structures hidden beneath the ice. However, scientists explain that these formations are the result of natural erosion. Wind and ice sculpt mountains over thousands of years, sometimes creating shapes that resemble pyramids. Science has found no evidence of ancient civilizations in Antarctica. The continent is protected by an international agreement called the Antarctic Treaty, which states that it must be used only for scientific and peaceful purposes. Now let's talk about the solar cycle at the poles. Because of Earth's tilt, the poles experience extreme periods of light and darkness. During the polar summer, the sun does not set for months. This is known as the midnight sun. during the polar winter, the sun does not rise for months. This is called the polar night. Imagine living for months without seeing the sun, or months with constant daylight. This affects animals, plants, and even researchers working in scientific bases. Speaking of research bases, Antarctica has no permanent population. Only scientists and researchers live there temporarily, in research stations from various countries, such as the United States, Chile, and Brazil. The Arctic, on the other hand, is surrounded by countries like Canada, Russia, Norway, and Greenland. Indigenous peoples have lived in the region for thousands of years, including the Inuit. Another important difference involves the ice. In the Arctic, much of the ice is sea ice, meaning it floats on water. When it melts, the impact on sea level is smaller because it was already floating. In Antarctica, the ice is on solid land. If large amounts of that ice melt, global sea levels could rise significantly. That is why both poles are fundamental to global climate balance. They reflect a large portion of sunlight back into space, helping regulate the planet's temperature. This effect is called albedo. Today, both poles are undergoing rapid changes due to global warming. Arctic sea ice has declined over recent decades. Parts of Antarctica are also showing signs of instability. Even though they seem distant and isolated, what happens there affects the entire planet. So when we think about the Arctic and Antarctica, we are not just talking about ice. We are talking about climate balance, unique biodiversity, rare natural phenomena, and regions that still hold many mysteries. The North is a frozen ocean surrounded by civilizations. The South is a frozen continent isolated from the world. One has polar bears. The other has penguins. One is influenced by the continents around it. The other is isolated by powerful ocean currents. Both experience months of light and months of darkness. And even in the coldest, quietest, and seemingly emptiest places on Earth, there is life, movement, and history. The poles are not just the ends of the planet. They are essential pieces in the functioning of Earth as a living system. And perhaps the most impressive thing is this. Even with all our modern technology, we are still learning about these two frozen worlds.